Good evening and welcome to this evening's Planning Application Committee meeting on the 16th of November 2021. First of all, can I start by apologising that we are 20 minutes late in starting. That's due to an unforeseen circumstance which has now been resolved. I would like to apologise particularly to our members, officers and members of the general public who are here tonight and those who were perhaps trying to tune in at home. My first item on the agenda is the evacuation procedure. So a fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Virgin Money building, formerly the Yorkshire Bank, on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of the staff. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded for future publication on the Council's website. Please can I ask that you now turn off your mobile phones or ensure that at least switch to silent. Okay, item number 2, apologies. I have one apology tonight and that's from Councillor Pandare, who is being substituted by Councillor Brown. So thank you very much for joining us this evening, Councillor Brown. Item 3, the minutes. So hopefully you've all had a chance to study the minutes. And if we're happy, can I have a proposer and a seconder? So thank you, Councillor Mark proposed, Councillor Smith second. So if we are all happy that they are just an accurate record, can I have a show of hands, please? Okay. So that's carried. So I shall sign the minutes off. Because she wasn't here last, Councillor Shepard. I believe that's why you haven't. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, item number 4, declarations of interest. So do any members have any declarations of interest other than the ones already published? Councillor Brown.
Chair, as my name doesn't appear on the declarations of interest for this committee, they're as the ones in the regular schedule which everybody has notice of for regular council meetings.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. I see no other hands, so can I just ask, are there any declarations of contact? So there's a few. Okay, so I'll take them from left to right. So Councillor Brown.
Chair, yes. In relation to agenda item number 3, which is a site at Croxall Street, I've had contact with the applicant. I've also sent a letter of support for this application. So when we come to discuss that item, I will leave the room and not take part in the debate.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Brown. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 2, I have had contact with Marcus Jones MP, and I see on the addendum he's down as an objector to this. I haven't discussed any voting intention.
Thank you. So you should be able to vote on this, unless I'm correct, yeah. Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to agenda item 2, which is the telecommunications mast, I've just remembered that I have had communication from local ward councillors and who, on behalf of the objectors and the objectors themselves, I believe, because where it is, it abuts Whitestone and the Attleborough ward. So, but I haven't given any indication as to how I would vote.
Thank you, Councillor. So obviously you'll be free to vote and speak on that matter. And Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 4, 10 Wood Street. I've been contacted by residents who have objected to this application. I haven't specified how I will vote on this, but I have noted their concerns.
Okay, so are you saying that you won't be able to vote or that you will be able to vote on this matter? What are you sort of implying, Councillor? Can you be very clear?
Oh, I will be speaking and voting on this application, yes.
Good. I just wanted to confirm that was the case. I know we'd spoken earlier on, but I just wanted it to be heard nicely and loudly by the members of the public. Okay, that brings us on to our first item this evening. So, Phil, whenever you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just put the... Okay, so This application is for a two-storey extension to front, single-storey extension to rear with an access ramp and an erection of a residential annex to the rear at 109 Hinkley Road, Nuneaton. The property is a two-storey semi-detached residential property constructed out of a mixture of render and brick with a hit roof and an existing single-storey extension to rear. There have been 5 objections from 4 addresses, and these have been indicated in the report. The key issues to consider for this application are the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, and the impact on highway safety. So, firstly, we'll look at the residential amenity. The first adjacent neighbour which it will impact is a detached property and so is unattached to the applicant property. This is 107 Hinkley Road. The front elevation has a ground and first floor habitable window. However, once the lines as outlined in section 11 of the SPD have been drawn, it is not significantly impacted by the proposal at 109 Hinkley Road. The rear elevation has a 2-storey red brick extension which cannot be protected and blocks the rest of the rear elevation from being impacted. The original part of the side elevation is in line with the original side elevation of the applicant property, and so none of the elements of this proposal will impact it. Overall, there is no unacceptable impact to the residential amenity of this property. The second neighbouring property which is impacted by the proposal is the attached semi-detached neighbour 111 Hinkley Road. The front elevation has a 2-storey bay window which could be protected, but due to the small projection dimensions of the front extension is not impacted. The rear elevation has a ground floor extension, and as the proposed rear extension is ground floor only, means that this is not impacted and is therefore that extension is therefore acceptable. Overall, there is not a detrimental impact on the residential amenity of the elevations of this property. The final element of this proposal is the erection of a residential annex in the rear garden. It is sited halfway down the rear garden on the boundary edge with number 111. Because of this, the property at number 107 remains unimpacted by this element, as it is not directly facing this property, and it is not located on the boundary of this property, and it meets all distance standards, and it does not directly project alongside any primary rear amenity space at this property. Distance standards to number 111 are met, as it does not directly face any of the original elevations. It does project 5.5 metres along the boundary with this property, however, due to the siting, it is felt this is not alongside private rear amenity space. Overall, it is felt there is not a significant negative impact on the residential amenity of the neighbouring properties as a result of this element of the proposal. The second key issue is to assess the impact on visual amenity. The only element of the application that is visible in the street scene is the proposed 2-storey extension to the front, as the extension to rear and the annex are entirely to the rear of this property. This proposal meets all the paragraphs set out in the SPD, as it does not detract from the character of the area, and it does not create a feature that is harmful to the street scene and is therefore acceptable. Finally, the size and dimensions of the extension to the front will not be prominent or incongruent in the street scene, as it will not project significant distance in front of the street scene at Hinkley Road. Finally, Warwick County Council Highways were consulted on the application, and after amended plans were submitted, the response was one of no objection, subject to 2 conditions being adhered to and placed on the decision notice. The first condition was considered to be unenforceable, and such was reworded to the condition number 5, which is stated in the report. The second condition was that the annex remain ancillary to the main dwelling, and this is condition 4 in the report. Overall, as a response of no objection, it was felt that there was no significant impact on the highway safety because of this application. Overall, there is not a significant harm caused by the development and the proposal, and therefore the recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions printed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. I understand we did have one speaker. I'm not sure if they're here. Do we have a Mr. Lewis Jackson here tonight to speak? No. So, okay, so as Mr. Jackson isn't here to speak tonight, we'll move to the debate. So I need somebody to propose the motion to grant planning permission. Do I have a proposer? So Councillor Evans and Councillor Smith, you're happy to second. Okay, so in that case, I will move to the debate then. Are there any councillors who wish to speak on this matter? Okay, Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I only have 2 concerns about this. One is drainage, because we're building a lot more floor space here. A lot of the areas on combined drains, and we're talking about new drives, etc. And I understand there's a separate process to consent the drainage. So I think that's been dealt with, that concern, but it would be worth maybe, I don't know if we can note it or something, just to say that, you know, drainage needs to be consented separately, because we do have a massive problem over these combined drains, and if the highways want better drainage for all the new surface at the front, we want to make sure that's not going into the combined drain. And my second concern is the height of the annex at the back, and I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a permitted development right later for that to be converted from a flat roof to an apex roof or anything, because we know how these things happen. When we go on site visits, people build something with a flat roof that's so high, and then eventually it becomes pitched. So if the officers could confirm the permitted development on from that, that'd be great, Chair.
Yeah. So could I ask officers then, do they have any sort of comments in answer to Councillor Condacor's questions?
So, as for the permitted development rights, as it's on the boundary, they can go as high as 2.5 metres. So, if I'll just have a look at the I think I haven't got it here. It is 2.5 metres, so I can't imagine that they'll be able to go any higher than that. As for the drainage, I mean, I guess a note could be put on about it, but I'm not sure whether that is, if Ash can confirm that.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a condition 5 regarding drainage. So you're suggesting something in addition to that, Councillor? Because to my mind, that's sufficient.
Chair, if I may, I was just suggesting that when that condition is discharged, that they're mindful of the area and it's a combined sewer, to make sure that it's whoever's discharging the condition and agrees to its discharge notes concerns over drainage.
Thank you, Chair. So we can make a note on our system, so when whoever's dealing with that discharge, that they can pick that up, if that allays your concerns, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condacor. Do I have any other speakers on this matter? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. It's simply a comment here that the plans that we've been presented with on pages 23, 24 and 25 do not have an orientation point on to show which is north. Now, you can see from the plan on page 23 that it's orientated as per the site plan, but it's not at all clear till you do some a bit more looking into this. The plans on 24 and 25 are actually orientated the other way. So it would be really useful in future to have the orientation point marked on the plans so that members can actually work out which way the development's facing. And similarly, we haven't got a site plan that shows the location of the annex relative to the property.
Could I just ask members if they feel they would like officers just to very quickly try and help orientate them? Would that be useful, or are we okay? So you're okay, or you'd like, yeah, you're okay? You'd like an orientation. So is it possible to give us some sort of an orientation to help us work out which direction is north? I guess if you look at page 21, just to answer your question, you can see the property there, and you can see the existing ground floor plan, which sort of sticks out, sort of staggered bit. So you can sort of see that, and they can see the north pointer on there. So as we look up the page, that is north, looking at it, okay?
Chair, I understood that. It's the plans on the two following pages
Right,
are
the two
actually
following pages,
orientated
24 and 25.
the other way around.
Well, they're getting
Right.
I'll just come in.
Yeah.
Just while colleagues are trying to pull those maps up, just so members are aware, the plans are effectively, we utilise the plans that are submitted. What I would say is if this was a request going forward, that's obviously additional work that officers are going to have to do. Point taken, it would be better to have orientation on there. And in this instance, if members can't make a decision without it, we'll try to talk you through it, but it wouldn't be realistic for us to go away and do that for every application. And particularly these smaller applications, typically the plans are a bit less definitive in terms of what they have to submit to us.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I say, looking at certainly page 25, the top of the page looks like it's pointing north because it's got the bay window on it, which aligns with what we've seen on the previous pages. Okay, so hopefully that helps you to orientate. Is anyone else sort of struggling with anything in that regard? No. Okay, do I have any other questions or speakers? Okay, so if we have no further speakers, we'll move to the vote then. So can I have all those in favour? Sorry.
Do you want him to talk through it?
Oh, sorry, you got it. Okay, sorry, my apologies.
So this is the site plan of where the extensions, the annex, are going to be. So if I follow my mouse, this is the proposed two-storey front extension. This is the proposed single-storey rear extension, and then this is the location of the proposed annex. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to the vote because I think we've got all the speakers that we're going to have. So the motion in front of us is to approve. All those in favour? Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, if we can then move to item 2, please, when you're ready.
This is second item. This application is a prior notification application for a 15-metre Phase 8 telecommunication street pole with associated equipment. The pole is located on a grass verge which is situated on the junction of Mill Close and Littleworth Road. The site is owned by Warwickshire County Highways, and the street scene is predominantly residential. Notwithstanding the amount of objections, this has been reported to committee by Councillor Sargent. There have been 12 objections from 8 addresses with the points raised clearly displayed in the report. Also, there has been a comment from Marcus Jones, MP, and his points are indicated in the addendum. There's only one key issue which can be considered to determine this application, and that is whether the siting and appearance of the development is acceptable. The top image is the proposed site plan showing the location of the new equipment and pole. The bottom image is a site photo showing the site. A sequential approach, as outlined in the MPPF, was used, and this has been to confirm this site, and this has been confirmed by the applicant and agent in their supporting the documents. The approach is to first try to share or reuse any existing telecommunication sites, then to utilise any suitable existing structural building, and then to look for sites where freestanding installations could be implemented. During this approach, it was found that within the search area, no existing communication sites and no suitable existing structural buildings were found that could accommodate the proposal. Overall, 6 other sites were considered and discounted before the current site on Mill Close was confirmed. This current site is therefore considered acceptable. The second point is about the appearance. The erection of a 15-metre pole will create a feature that is visually prominent. However, it is felt there will be no detrimental impact on the character of the street scene. This is because the current design at the selected siting was determined by the developer to be the least visually intrusive option available, and thus officers decided that it would be acceptable. Furthermore, due to the continued rollout of 5G, a new, taller, slimline pole is not going to be uncommon within the borough. Therefore, as stated, the appearance will be acceptable. In conclusion, the recommendation is for the committee to confirm that prior approval is not required. It's because high-speed mobile connectivity is considered the lifeblood of the community, and the proposal when siting on Mill Close is considered the optimum solution to extend the coverage to the target community. Furthermore, it fits in with the rollout of the network across the borough and should be a benefit to the community, while also minimising the visual impact that a 15-metre pole could cause. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. I've got two members of the public who wish to speak in objection to this, so I'm going to go to them first. So we've got Mr. King and Mrs. Lancaster. I'll take you in the order that you appear on the sheet in front of me, which is Mr. King, if you would like to go first. So you'll have 3 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I speak on behalf of my neighbours in Mill Close and nearby Lutterworth Road. We're not NIMBYs, we're not Luddites, we're not stupid. We recognise the fact that these poles have to be there. Our argument really is the location to which we're objecting. The application as submitted is, as far as we're concerned, incomplete, inaccurate, and frankly, in some cases, quite arrogant in terms of the submissions that they put there. There is no consideration anywhere in there of other places in the area, such as Paulsland, which has massive acres. There are some photographs available, which are not up there at the moment, where there are 3 other possible locations. One is the access road into Paulsland, which is 130 by roughly 10 yards square. There is the car park in Lutterworth Road, but the best location would be off the footpath in Lutterworth Road, where there is a clearing within the trees of in excess of 100 square metres, and there is already an electricity substation there. So we submit that environmentally what they've suggested here is wrong, and there are better options. The initial letter for this was dated the 5th of October, arrived at my house on the 9th of October, which is Saturday. The description of the application was meaningless, but I was able to work out that 15 metres represents 50 feet, which is twice the height of my house and all the other surrounding houses. Right. I sent an email on the 10th, which was a Sunday, to the planning department with a list of 6 questions asking for more clarification. I have not as yet received a reply. It would appear at the initial time that letters were only sent to 1A, 1, 2 and 3 Mill Close on the first go. The letters 1A were sent to the wrong address. It's only the fact that my neighbour and I canvassed our neighbours that we've got more objections now. The following comments apply to the application documentation. The first application form, this questions whether neighbours have been consulted, to which the answer was yes. This is not true. No contact has been made with anybody. Section 8 there, the question is whether advice has been sought from the local authority, to which the answer was yes. There is on that application form a section which has not been completed, telling who was spoken to, so that we in turn could query that. The next form is what was called the CN IRP form. The question is asked, did you make a site visit as part of this assessment? To which the answer was no. I cannot believe that an assessment can be made without a site visit. The third paperwork is supplementary information. Section 2 asks whether the council's master register was checked, to which the answer is no. Why not? The next paragraph considers the risk of increased visual amenity. Well, has anyone seen one of these poles? It's hardly a thing of beauty.
Hey, Mr. King, can I ask, as the 3-minute timer has gone, could you just sum up any final point, please, that you have to make?
Right. If we look at the discounted options, it's the oldest trick in the book to pick out half a dozen items which can never be right, and therefore the one that you've chosen is the correct answer. I'd say again, the conclusion, the best option on this would be in the clearing, in the footpath off Lutterworth Road, where no houses will see it. The pole will be lost in the trees, and the whole thing will be unseen to most normal people.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. King. If you just turn your microphone off, please. Thank you. I'd just like to ask any members, does anyone have any points of clarification only they would like to ask Mr. King at this point? Yes, Councillor Hammersley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. King, do you know the distance from where it's proposed to go to this distance in the clearing? Do you know the distance from the proposed to the distance where you say and your residents would like it to go?
The footpath is opposite Arden Road. It's roughly halfway between Mill Close and Whitestone. I would say 300 metres. I'm guessing. I would say 300 metres. Can I make a point too? If you look at the alternatives which you suggested, they're all much further away.
Okay.
The proposed location...
Sorry, Mr King, I'm going to have to stop you there because it's really an opportunity for councillors to question you on any, just on points of clarification, rather than you trying to provide extra unrequested information. That's what your 3 minutes is there for, so I do apologise. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. You've suggested an alternative site in the access to the green area further on up Lutterworth Road. How would you envisage the maintenance of the pole if it was in that site down that green jitty for the service of that site? Because these do come, unfortunately, with a big box, telecommunications box, which sit alongside them, so they will require access to be serviced.
Very simple. 3 weeks ago, there were two electrical vans there, big electrical vans, doing some work on the sub building. There is a farm gate and a single gate. The farm gate can be opened presumably by the council. Access would be no problem.
Councillor Wilson, is that okay? Yeah. Anyone else got any further points just for clarification at this point? No. So thank you very much, Mr King. So I'll now call on Mrs Lancaster to have her 3 minutes.
Hello, yes. I'm here to object to the planning application and to urge you as a committee to reject it. Firstly, I was informed by social media and a neighbour of the proposal and only received my letter sometimes afterwards. My address is 103 Lutterworth Road. I find that inexcusable. The application states that the community had been consulted prior to this application. This is certainly not true. I'm not against the erection of a 5G mast, and I realise the benefits of it and the government's directive towards it, but I'm strongly objecting to the proposed siting of this mast. I live on the corner of Lutterworth Road and Mill Close, and it's my house that features in your photographs and diagrams. The impression from the photograph shows that the mast to be of a comparable size to the lamppost. I didn't have time. I mean, this red one that was circulated by the media. In actual fact, it'll be twice the size of that mast. Twice the size of that lamppost in the actual drawings, which you've shown on there. I find this very misleading, as do others, and believe it was meant to disguise its actual size. The mast would be approximately 5 metres from my sitting room window. The lamppost already in situ in that photograph is in direct eye line, as the mast will be. This is actually intrusive, to say the least. If a site visit had been taken place, which seems questionable now, they would have realised the close proximity to my property and the position of my window. I realise that, however, wherever a mast is erected, the top of the mast will be seen to some degree due to its height, but the unsightly appearance of the cabinets make it essential that the site should be chosen which is the least intrusive and have the least amount of visible impact on the community. The addition of the 3 cabinets are the ultimate concern on that verge, as it's very small, and in its entirety it'll be nothing short of an eyesore. The application talks of impact on the visual amenity, character and appearance of the surrounding area. These obviously have received no consideration. To my knowledge, there are no other masts in the borough with such prominence as is being proposed with this particular application. I'm not convinced that all alternative sites have been explored thoroughly, and I would suggest that other sites have given consideration. I've no objections to the mast being sited further along the verge into Paul's Land where there's adequate space. When considering the other roads that were named, Leam Close was never considered, and that has adequate space for concealment. Off Lutterworth Road into Portia Close, there's a large plot there too. Also, up by the shops in Whitestone, which already houses 4 cabinets, was never mentioned. So I'm therefore asking you to reject this application in its present form. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lancaster. Are there any members who would like to ask any questions on points of clarification at this stage from what Mrs. Lancaster has said? No. Okay. So the motion we've got in front of us then, is for Planning Committee to recommend to confirm that prior approval is not required for this mast. So for the purposes of this motion to enable discussion, do I have a proposer and a seconder? So Councillor Evans, you'll propose. Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Markham as the seconder. Okay, so just to allow, so we do this just to enable debate to take place. Okay, we have to move the motion. Are there which councillors would like to speak on this matter? Okay, so Councillor Condacor.
Thank you, Chair. We have a similar mast, but obviously not as big on the Wenton Road. And my concern here is how narrow the pavement is, because it looks like all the electronics and ducts are right against what would be a single person wide pavement going in. And I know it looks like it's hedging and things a bit on the other side of the pavement, which obviously then cuts into the pavement. So I am concerned this is quite close in to the hedge, the very narrow pavement, and then all the ducting and things. And it does seem more sensible to have it somewhere a bit wider. And I'm not sure if the hedge is actually maintained by the Borough Council taking a tractor along, or whether it's done by hand. But we do seem to be always making these horrible channels where we've got a pavement, a hedge growing in, and then we put all these boxes in the way for telecoms. So I'm not happy without sort of seeing it or getting some idea of how much space is left. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condacor. Is there anything you need to clarify with officers?
Well, I think the pavement's probably about 1.5 meters wide looking at the plan, so I don't think officers would disagree with that. Obviously, I haven't seen how wide the hedge comes out, but I say I'm not minded to be keen on it being so close to a narrow pavement. If they'd have moved it somewhere a bit wider, that would ease my...
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Evans.
I just wanted to raise it seems rather silly, but the colour of the mast, because although I'm not sure we would be able to add it as a condition, I'm just thinking if it was a specific colour, maybe dark green, it might blend in better with the area. I'm not sure that's if Ash could come back on what the proposals are at the moment on that. Or, sorry, I don't know the name of this new officer. Phil, yes, I don't know if you can come back on that.
So with respect to the colour and materials, that is something that we could sort of go back on, certainly. So in terms of that aspect, yeah, we could pick that up. And obviously we'd have to have good reason for that, but from what you're saying, it would be effectively sort of blending it within the street scene. So to my mind, that would be an appropriate condition that we could add.
Councillor Evans, have you got a follow-up point?
I just want to say, so if the committee is minded to approve this, could we add that as a condition if I propose that?
Yes, yeah, I'm happy with that. Do I have a second for that? Yes, Councillor Condicle, yours was the first hand I saw. So can we just take a quick vote on that? All those in favour of putting that as a condition? Okay, should we grant approval? Okay, so, sorry, can I just have everyone's hands at the same time and just keep them up? So that is unanimous. So if we go ahead, we will have that as a condition. Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting a sense of deja vu because I remember doing this when we had the rollout of 4G, and I suspect when we end up with 6G, or whatever they decide to call them, it will be the same. I suspect there's probably only myself, Councillor Condacor and Councillor Shepherd, possibly, who might remember doing the old round that we did. So I do actually remember in the past we have done that and conditioned them as green or some similar colour, so I think that is something which is worthwhile doing. The problem for me is, with this, there are no planning objections to hang our hat on. Do I like it? No. Do the residents like it? No. Do I agree with them? Yes. But I'm sitting here in a quasi-judicial capacity trying to find a reason which would be upheld by a planning inspector. Now, I have concerns about some of the procedures which may or may not have been followed, and I would ask officers if they could investigate that and give us some reassurance, because taking at face value what the speakers have said, that does sound slightly procedurally unfair to them in terms of what's gone on. Sighting is always going to be a difficult issue with these masts because everyone wants fast mobiles. Probably most of us in here have got a mobile. We all loved it when 4G came in, but there's always a cost to doing that, and we want 5G, and there's a cost to doing that. Some of the other sites mentioned by the speakers are either equally or even more unpalatable and would affect other people just as much or if not more than is being suggested by our speakers tonight. Portia Close, for example, is far more open and exposed, and more residents would be blighted by it than, in my view, would be blighted by it in this instance. That's not me supporting the application, it's me stating the actual physical geography. And putting it by the white stone on that junction for me is a massive no-no. I objected to the 4G one by the SO garage at the time because mainly of the box going in there and the visibility display. Now, at the time, County Highways had nothing to say about that, and they said it wouldn't affect the visibility display. We've now got an application which this committee has passed for 621 houses off Golf Drive. One of the mitigations is they're going to be taking in the verges on 3 out of the 4 approaches to that junction, bringing that in, so where the boxes are currently situated will be a lot more closer to the road and the visibility display than they were back 5 or 6 years ago. And so my concern would be, if that was to be a site and the box that goes with it, would that also be an issue? One of the concerns I would have about some of the other suggested sites that are being located is access to maintain these things. I suspect other councillors have had these calls, but when services go down, one of the first things that goes out is on the community forums, why has the internet gone down around Shakespeare Avenue, Shakespeare Drive, or wherever it might else be in the borough? And then you've got to get people in to repair those facilities. And my concern about putting it in some of the other places suggested are dealing with telecommunications equipment might be slightly more difficult than, say, your normal sewerage or gas or electricity utilities. So unless someone can provide me with a planning reason to hang my hat on, I am going to be forced to have to vote for this. But I think there is a wider point here, Chair, about how we deal with these moving forward. So I would ask, through your good offices, Chair, and through Ash and maybe Richard as the portfolio holder, that I think we need some training on this again about what goes on, because a lot of stuff gets mentioned about the health impacts of the radio waves. Last time we had a whole training issue on that about how it doesn't end up in the spectrum, which causes some of the feared health implications. You attended a recent thing on 5G, and I saw the presentation where it shows the different wavelengths and where they start to get into being medical territory and where 5G is going to be sitting. I think that would be beneficial for the committee moving forwards and what our options and rights are, because it is very complicated. So I think if we're going to get more of these, I think we need to be clued up on them. Not that I want to sit through another training course on it, but I will if I have to. So, and one other thing, it's only a minor thing, but it's on there as one of the reasons for objection, is about house prices. And this is a bugbear of mine, and people have said that they've had their houses valued and what might happen. In planning terms, that means diddly squat. Your house price can go up as well as down, and a planning application does not guarantee you a house value. So that is not a planning reason at all for refusing any kind of planning application. So I understand residents will be upset by it, but you have no guaranteed right to a certain price on your house because of a planning application. Them's the rules. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Can I just remind members that when we are talking about this, what we're considering, okay, is the design and the siting. We're not talking about any possible sort of problems caused by radio telecommunication waves or anything like that. That's not what we're here to consider. So please, can I just make that clear to everybody in terms of when we're coming to our decisions, individual decisions, that we bear that in mind. Okay, so it's just the siting, the design and the siting. That's all we're concerned with. Councillor Smith.
That's why I suggested the training course.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's something that we spoke about in our sort of briefing last night, myself, Councillor Shepherd and Ash. So it's something I just thought it's timely to raise that now as you've brought it up, Councillor Wilson. I thank you for bringing that up. Councillor Smith.
Yes, just quickly, I don't want to drag that out, just to answer Councillor Wilson. As a member of the Digital Infrastructure Board in Warwickshire, I can arrange that training via the board, so fairly quickly. I have similar concerns to Councillor Wilson, particularly with regard to what I've heard from residents about the lack of consultation. And I'm just wondering if officers can, I know that's one of the conditions, they have to have a meaningful consultation. I'm wondering if I can ask officers how we monitor that and how we tick that box to say, yes, they've satisfied that.
So, from my understanding, the neighbours will get a letter through and a site notice will be erected on street furniture in the immediate vicinity of the proposed site. So, as you can see from the agenda, there is a list of the neighbours that were notified and when the site notice would have been erected on street furniture. If that helps, thank you.
Councillor Smith, do you have any further comments?
Yeah, I get that. Doesn't seem like much of a consultation, though, just to let people know what you're doing. I'm not sure if we can drag that out. My mind was going to possibility of a deferment to put forward these alternative sites and get the applicants to have a dialogue with the neighbours. But I'm not sure if it's worth going down that road, because I agree with Councillor Wilson in the sense that there aren't a lot of planning regulations to hang our hat on to refuse it. It's pretty much permitted development. So I'll park the idea for the moment.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Shepherd.
Mr. Chairman, I did take the trouble to send in some photographs of the proposed sites. I don't see any record of them here.
Yeah, I did receive them. I believe other members of the committee were sent out to... Sorry, yes, I received them and they were received by all members of the committee. They were sent out to everybody, I believe, yesterday. So we have had a chance to study... No, we've received an email with them.
They would have answered some of the questions that Councillor Wilson just
Yeah.
on access.
Yeah, but the purpose of this, hopefully you can understand, Mr. King, is for us to discuss. So that's what we're here for. And it's a very useful tool for us, as are photographs. So we use every means at our disposal to reach our decision. So thank you. So Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair. I do share the same concerns as Councillor Wilson. I do feel it's a bit deja vu. We've been here before. with 4G. I'm not happy with the siting of this there. I think it's the wrong site. There's been a comment from the county in terms of they might have difficulty servicing the lamppost with it there, so I've got concerns. I might be happier if I knew that the consultation with the residents had actually taken place, so I might be happy to support Councillor Smith's idea of a deferment, just so we can be assured that residents have been consulted properly and other sites have been looked at, because at the moment I'm not sure what other sites were looked at. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd just like to come in at this point because obviously I am also concerned about the lack of consultation, and for me consultation is very important. As somebody who's been sat where you are fighting something that's been built in my community, so I've sat in this chamber as a member of the public, and I've argued, so it's something that's quite close to my heart. And I think it is important that members of the public are duly consulted, and it is a full and proper consultation, not just a paper exercise. So that is something that does concern me, and something that perhaps we need to look at in future, and how we do consultations to ensure that it goes out to a wide enough number of neighbours and not perhaps just to immediately neighbouring people. Sorry, Councillor, just allow me to finish. The second point is we do actually have some grounds that we could look at, I believe, to turn this down on if we wish to, which are on visual amenity. So there is an issue as far as visual amenity goes and the impact on the character of the area. So they're the two areas which we could actually ask officers to turn this down if we so decided to do so. So I think that, and obviously the consultation might provide us with the grounds that we're looking for. So I think I saw Councillor Evans first, so I'll just bring you in first and then I'll come to you, Councillor Wilson.
Forgive me, Chair, it's not about this application specifically, but on the matter of 5G masts across the borough, are we not required as part of the local plan to have a sort of supplementary planning document earmarking potential sites for masts in the same way that we have a sort of, call for sites for land in the borough plan? Or in the same way that we're looking for land for gypsy and traveller accommodation? I swear Solihull has an SPD for 5G masts. So,
thank you, Chair. So we're not required to do that. We have a policy in the adopted plan regarding telecommunications, but there's no requirement and there's nothing specified that we would produce such a document. The authority could do that, if that was something the authority wanted to do.
Okay, so Councillor Wilson, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. So on the point of consultation, I think I'm more interested, if we are looking at deferral, I think it would be very difficult to do because could they go on non-determination? Is that still something they could do with this type of application? But I'm more interested in how they have said on their application form that they've engaged in consultation, and the residents have said they had none from the actual applicant. I take that we have done our stuff that we should be doing under our policies, so I'm not sure that would be the issue on consultation for me. It's more about they've ticked a box and signed basically a statement of truth to say we've done all this, but if they haven't, then I'm concerned about that. And I'd also be interested in officers' views about your possible suggested reasons for refusal, because bitter experience on this committee has told me that when we have suggested that before as potential reasons for refusal, the answer was that they would not be able to be substantiated at appeal. Now, if I have, granted, Ash is new on that side because we did it under Catherine Morton, if you can give me a different answer and a different range of reasons why we could uphold it, I'm all ears, but my experience tells me otherwise. So I'd be interested to hear officer advice on that.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the consultation element, that's probably the easiest. I would be nervous about supporting a deferral on consultation because it doesn't really enable, or it shouldn't be influencing your decision in terms of the planning committee. Now, with prior approvals, there's a time limit that applies to them that we have to make a decision, and we're effectively over that time. we would have to basically agree another extension of time with the applicant. So in that instance, where with prior approvals, it's you get deemed approval if you go over. So from a consultation point of view, my understanding is we have, as an authority, followed the process that's established within the statement of community involvement. Now, if we want to look at that moving forward, then it's within the authority's gift to do that, and that might be a valid thing to do. In terms of the applicant's engagement with residents, yeah, you know, ultimately we don't monitor that, and ultimately that shouldn't inform your decision making, whether that's ethically right or not. But effectively, we rely on what they've said. In terms of the decision making, it is within your gift as planning committee to deem that prior approval is required and not granted. Now, you can do that only for the sighting and appearance. So that's all you can focus your minds on. Whether that will stand up at appeal is not something that I can say it definitely will, and whether that would result in costs, again, I can't say that it wouldn't. All I can say is it is within your gift. Now, I support the recommendation within the officer report, and that is what I would encourage the committee to do. From what I've heard in terms of the discussion, there's concerns around the sighting and the appearance of the mast. So it's effectively considering, well, why is the sighting inappropriate? Are there safety concerns? So Councillor Condacor indicated that there was concerns around the width of the pavement. Yeah, so is that creating a safety concern? Whether that would stand up at appeal, I can't say it would, because we haven't had a response to that effect. But that is a valid justification to go down if that is a concern of the committee. In terms of the appearance, it's really given consideration in the context of the Sustainable Design and Construction SPD. And there are elements within that SPD regarding visual amenity. Now, if the committee were reminded to effectively deem that the prior approval is required and not granted, then it would be considering it in that context. But I would, in terms of articulating the point around Catherine Morton's advice, I would agree with that, and I would say we may well struggle at appeal in defending those.
Okay, Councillor, would you have any further comments to make?
I think that having weighed up the advice, and it is a careful weighing up act, and it isn't an easy one to do, but that's what we are elected to do, I can't see any reason for refusal on that basis. And I think Ash has given a careful summary of the pros and cons either way. And my main concern is we are going to be getting an awful lot more of these come through, I suspect. Can we afford to be wasting 30, 40, 50,000 pounds in costs at an appeal when we have a £1.5 million deficit to find just to balance the books next year? That is a very difficult conundrum to answer. And so I think on balance, I will have to vote with the recommendation. I don't like it, but I have no argument, I feel, to take to that is defendable before the inspector.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers? Right, so in that case, we'll move to the vote. So we have a proposal in front of us to recommend that we confirm that prior approval is not required. So all those in favour? Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, against? That's 7 versus 3. Any abstentions? Okay, so that is carried then. So Planning Committee is recommending to confirm that prior approval is not required. Yes. Yes, sorry. We will also be including the condition that we discussed from Councillor Evans as well. So at that point, that now becomes part of it. So hopefully everyone was aware of that. Okay, so I think we've now got a change of presenter, and we'll move to item number 3. Thank you. You're free to go if you've spoken. You don't need to stay for the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks. This application is for the erection of one bungalow and some amendments to some vehicle parking spaces approved under a previous permission on the site. The parcel of land is relatively flat and clear of trees and vegetation. The surrounding area is predominantly residential with a variety of property types and designs. The plot is within the identified settlement boundary with neighbouring residential dwellings to the north, south, east and west. The site is located within the boundary of Bedworth Town Centre, and it is also within Bedworth Town Centre Conservation Area. The key issues to consider are the principle of the development, the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, the impact on the conservation area, and the impact on highway safety. The proposal is for one dwelling, which will take the form of a bungalow. The application also includes some changes to the parking layout previously approved when some dwellings were considered on the adjacent site. Policy DS2 of the adopted borough plan states that the Bedworth Town Centre has a supporting role to play in the borough. DS2 also states that in principle, sites within Bedworth are appropriate for housing development. The land is within the settlement boundary. However, as it is not within any designated development sites, it would be classed as a windfall site. The land is brownfield land within the existing urban area, and the proposal is therefore considered acceptable in principle. In regard to the proposal's impact on residential amenity, the proposed bungalow is surrounded by other residential units, as already mentioned. The council have the adopted Sustainable Design and Construction SPD, which is used as a guide to help assess the impact on residential amenity. All of the standards within the SPD are met by the proposal, and accordingly there is considered to be no significant impact on the residential amenity of these surrounding properties. In regard to the impact on visual amenity, the gable roof which is proposed is in keeping with its surroundings. The bungalow will be relatively unobtrusive in size and scale. The proposed materials will be reserved by condition, and these will be chosen so as to be in keeping with the surrounding area and the conservation area. The bungalow's siting is logical and is in line with the character of the area. Excuse me. There is currently a draft SPD on the Bedworth Town Centre Conservation Area. This has been released for review but is yet to be adopted. Whilst the proposed bungalow would be newer in age than the other surrounding buildings, it is not considered that it would have a negative impact on them or the conservation area as a whole. The proposed dwelling would make a good use of the unused brownfield land, and both the smaller scale of the bungalow and the materials will mean that it will maintain the quality rather than harm the conservation area. The Highways Authority initially objected to the proposal. However, following amendments which were to reduce the size of the bungalow in order to improve the flow and turning space, Highways considered that these amendments are acceptable, and they now have no objection subject to some conditions. In conclusion, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out on the agenda. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Darren. I believe we've got a Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown would like to speak on this. Oh, sorry, you're leaving. Sorry, aren't you, Councillor Brown?
Chair, I'm leaving. I did
Yeah.
send a letter of support on this application.
Yes, you did send. You're right, absolutely. So yes, if you'd like to leave at this point, I don't believe there's any councillors that wanted to speak, was there, on this item? So it's just Councillor Brown leaving. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Walsh, I did not recognise you with your mask on there. it is you. Okay. Yes. Okay. So Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. May I start by saying I have no beneficial interest in this application, although I do have knowledge and do know the applicants for a number of years, but purely on a social level, and they are also residents within my ward. When asked to speak on their behalf, I first contacted the planning officer to discuss the issues that were being raised in terms of the objections to the proposed plan. Mainly speaking, parking, impact on light and privacy were mentioned. So once I viewed the plans, I arranged to meet Julie and Dave, the applicants, on site. Once on site, I could understand why the objections were raised in the first place, but since then, they have made changes to the request of the Highways Department, made amendments to the plans at the request of the Planning Department, and had a tree size report and topographical survey done. Whilst I was there at the site, which at the moment is a piece of waste ground to the side of 14 Greens Yard and the rear of 16 Croxall Street and backs onto the Arms houses. If we look back at the original site plan, please. The previous one approved? Just the general site plan. That's lovely. Thank you very much. If we look at the site plan, currently there is a 6-foot fence to the left side of the proposed plan. Yes. An open fence to the rear, which backs onto open mesh fence, which backs onto the Arms houses, and a low wall to the right-hand side. I recommend the erection of 6-foot fences across the back and also the side, because I felt this would improve the privacy of the plot compared to the site, compared to the buildings alongside. The house to the right, 14 Croxall Street, Greens Yard, has also originally got a 6-foot fence. In terms of the overlooking and obviously visual aspect, to the left, 14 Greens Yard, there is a 6-foot fence. The only window that's overlooking is an obscured bathroom window, which obviously has no problem because there is a 6-foot fence there already. To the right, there is the low wall, which I recommended the 6-foot fence. The only overlooking window is a stairwell window, and that property itself sits considerably lower than the proposed site. I also recommended the install extra surface water drainage due to the large driveway parking area and the slope of the plot, which they also agreed to do so. So in my opinion, I think there is no further reason why this application should not be approved by this committee.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Walsh. Can I ask, is there anyone who requires any clarification from our members? No. Okay, in that case, I have two further speakers. So I will go to our objector first, which is Mrs. Gillian White.
Good evening, everybody. We purchased and moved into our forever home at 16 Croxall Street about 3.5 years ago, and we chose this location for the peace, privacy and pleasant green outlooks and a town centre location. We share boundaries with the builder's land at Green Yard, right down the length and across the back of our dwelling. The builder bought Green Yard a couple of years ago and initially refurbished the house, which is on the land there, renting it out to 2 families without any problem. He then set about renovating the coach house, which actually shares its rear wall as our boundary. The renovation has been progressed in a manner which has caused us undue distress and pressure and has impacted negatively on our living situation. This property has now been completed and rented out to 2 families. However, during the renovation process, He put scaffolding on our garage roof and damaged it and took over a year and several requests to fix it. He knocked windows out of his coach house directly into our garden without asking. And when I mentioned this, he shoddily filled the worst one in with breeze blocks into a brick wall. All of the resulting debris is still there in my garden. He then rendered all 3 sides of the coach house apart from the one in my garden. I asked him to do it, but actually had to get building regs in to get it sorted. When the builder then found out that I'd submitted concerns about this proposed erection of the bungalow at the rear of my property, he and his partner became verbally abusive. His partner refused to leave my garden, and they threatened to build the biggest, ugliest monstrosity of a building onto the plot if their application was refused. So naturally now I'm even more concerned about them carrying out any further building work around my house. The proposed new bungalow would overshadow our back garden, blocking off daylight and sunlight. This would stop us from sitting out, enjoying the sunshine, growing plants and drying our clothes. The proposed bungalow would be squeezed onto land which is considerably higher than ours, so it would overshadow and overlook ours all the more. It's only a metre away from our boundary wall, and our back garden is less than 4 metres wide. The neighbour would be able to look down into our garden from theirs. Our house was built in 1880, so any excavation required in the building of the bungalow could affect the stability of our home. It would certainly affect the stability of an already weak retaining boundary wall. The bungalow would introduce a 5th dwelling onto a site where there was just one less than 4 years ago. This would bring increased cars and bins into a tight cul-de-sac already challenged by post office parking and restrict access further to my property. Proposed parking spaces 3, 4 and 5 are on the joint boundary wall, which is already weak and has not been replaced despite assurances from the builder that it would be. This ground is all elevated above our house, so car owners would be looking down directly into my garden. Parking space 3 is just 1 metre away from my glass kitchen door, so this would increase noise, disturbance, intrusion and pollution further directly into my home. When we bought our house, the views out the back stretched beautifully over gardens and into the rear of the historic almshouses. I could glance out my back window and check the time in their clock before going to bed. Naturally, this would be ruined and there would be no more light to the back of our home. So for all of these reasons, I therefore respectfully request that the current proposals are not permitted to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. White. Are there any points of clarification? No, so thank you very much. So if you could turn your microphone off, please.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. And then we'll go to the applicant, which I believe is Ms. Earnshaw.
Chair, committee, good evening. There are many positives towards this planning application. For example, it will provide a much needed town centre dwelling for retired persons. It would make good use of overgrown wasteland. It would also add towards the Borough Council's housing target, to name but a few. Since submitting the application in April, we have agreed for an extension 3 times. We've worked alongside the planning officer and altered the design. We've met on site with Highways and we've made all the changes they've requested in positioning the bungalow, moving the parking spaces to their suggestion, and reciting the waste bins. At the request of Parks and Leisure, we've had a topographical and tree survey done. I note there is an objection from the neighbours, but if I may just enlighten the committee with a little history about the plot of this land. Previous to us buying it, for the last 10 years, it was a very large area and remained empty with the exception of one elderly resident. No children, no pets, no cars, very few visitors. Almost like living next door to a field. Therefore, no change would be welcome by the neighbour. I have searched to the best of my ability, but can't find any reason why this application should not be passed. There is adequate parking and turning and loading area. There is no impact on the surrounding trees. There is no loss of light for the neighbours, nor are their properties overlooked. There would be high quality and well-designed outdoor space, offering a good standard of amenity to future occupiers. There would be minimal noise and disturbance during works. Several previous similar planning applications have been passed in the area, setting a precedent. Neighbouring properties are of mixed design and material with no pattern to the development. Therefore, the building would not be out of place. In balance and in public interest, any impact on the development does not outweigh the benefits. This may be just one dwelling, but a much-needed home for someone, and one more towards the council's target within their 5-year housing and land supply. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Earnshaw. Are there any points of clarification required? Ms Earnshaw, no? Okay, so in that case, the motion that we have in front of us to recommend planning permission, subject to the conditions printed. So, Councillor Evans, okay, you're happy to propose this. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Markham? Okay, so we can go ahead for the debate. So, do I have any speakers? So, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I would declare first, I believe that Mrs Earnshaw is one of my constituents, but I've got no relationship to the applicant. I think I once voted against one of your applications, but I probably shouldn't have reminded you about that. But I have to say, I'm impressed with this application. I genuinely am. I want to see more of these applications coming forward to the council, if anything. It's a site that I drive past regularly when going to the sorting office in Bedworth, the Royal Mail sorting office. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of these brownfield sites and wastelands in the town centre. And I think the applicant is right. We've got, particularly in Bedworth town centre, a massive shortage of housing. And as the National Planning Policy Framework states, we have to have a presumption in favour of development. So I'm actually very impressed with this application. It will have my absolute support, and I would also go to the extent of asking that the planning department use this as a case study to look at how actually people should be submitting planning applications on brownfield developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Condicore.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm a bit unsure because the applicant and the objectors are talking about ground levels. One seemed to say it's quite flat and the other seemed to say it's quite different elevations. I couldn't see any diagram of what the cross-section of the site's like, sort of from the applicant's site going on to number 16. And it's not an area I know particularly well. So I don't know if there is a diagram of what the cross-sectional officers can tell us what the height differences are between the applicant's site and number 16. And while I'm at it, the second point was I note there's 3 new trees at the north end of the site. I don't know if, because we have lots of applications which then come back to try and get the trees removed, if we've actually got conditions or if the tree officer is looking at what sorts of tree would be suitable so we don't put something in to have a screen that then needs removing in 5 or 10 years. Thank you, Chair.
In regard to the levels, we don't have a levels plan submitted with this scheme, as far as I'm aware. It's not a necessary plan for validation, and in many cases it's not for assessment either. I didn't make the site visit because I wasn't the officer that made the site visit. However, I have been on the site in the past. The actual site of where the bungalow is going to go is relatively flat, but the land is ever so slightly higher than the rear garden of number 16, because I've been in the garden of number 16 in the past.
Okay, Councillor Condicore, is that yes?
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite glad it's only slightly elevated. If you could just clarify the point on trees and if there was going to be a condition to ask that suitable trees are planted so they didn't get over large and then removed. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. There's no condition on at the moment about the provision of those trees. We could add a condition, either add it into condition 10, which already deals with trees on the site, or an additional condition that requires the planting of details of those trees prior to development and the planting of them prior to occupation, something like that. Obviously, we need those trigger points in there to make sure that it happens at certain stages. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Condacor.
Chair, I'm happy with a condition to say the trees should be specified. That solved my concern.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Walsh, I can't bring you in because you're not.
One comment, please, Chair.
Very quickly.
With regards to the height difference between the properties, just to make clarification for Councillor Condacor, I've visited the site twice to view it. The property we're talking about, number 16, is sunken quite considerably. Below the ground floor level is below the level of the land. So the only window, as it were, viewing is a stairwell window, which is obviously a first floor window. The wall currently on the right-hand side of the proposed property is only a small wall. So my suggestion was to install a 6-foot fence so as to enable to stop the obviously new residents overviewing into the sunken garden. Because yes, it would be a privacy issue, but with a 6-foot fence down there, there's no longer a privacy issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Sorry. Councillor Condacor, we sort of talked about the level. Does that help clarify in your mind those points that you were making or asking about?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy now.
With that in mind, then, do I have any other speakers? Or do I have any other proposals? No. No, it's not. The condition has been, nobody's proposed the condition. Okay, so in that case then, because no one's proposing any conditions, I shall move to the vote. Okay, so all those in favour? Okay, against? Abstentions? So 2 abstentions. Okay, so it is moved to recommend to grant planning permission subject to the conditions as printed. Thank you. If we move to item number 4, please, when you're ready. You are free to leave. Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks, Chair. This application is now solely for a single-storey extension to the side of number 10 Wood Street. The original application was for a conversion of the house into flats, but this was amended by the applicant as there were essentially fundamental issues with the application, which meant that approval was unlikely through negotiation with the planning department. As things stand, therefore, we are just assessing a single-storey extension to the side of the existing house. The application site is a 2-storey semi-detached house, as seen here on the plan. On the photo. Constructed of red-facing brick with a blue brick plinth to the base and a garden on the rear and side of the application site. There is a small garage or shed-type structure on the left-hand side of the dwelling, over which a single-storey extension will go. The key issues to consider here are the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, the impact on highway safety, and then we'll conclude the assessment. Following amended plans, as mentioned, the proposal is now just for a single-storey extension. Therefore, there would be no concerns over overlooking from the proposal into neighbouring properties, windows or gardens. Additionally, the proposal is set away from all nearby boundaries. Where ground floor windows are proposed, as in this case, the Design and Construction Design Guide states that there should be at least 20 metres from existing habitable ground floor windows. This window is around 13 metres from number 24 and 26 Joseph Luckman Road, but given that normal garden boundary treatments are in place, this will mitigate any potential loss of amenity, with it being only single storey. Overall, therefore, it is considered that there will be no significant harm to the residential amenity of nearby properties. The proposed roof type is acceptable in terms of design and will match the design of the existing dwelling. The proposed extension will be visible from the street scene, but would only be a relatively small feature. The extension will blend with the existing house and would be subservient in scale and form to the host dwelling, and does not project over the ridge line of the existing dwelling, being only single storey. Therefore, there are no significant concerns over the impact on visual amenity either. Following amended plans, the proposal now is just being a single storey extension. The Highways Authority consequently had no objection to the scheme. In conclusion, therefore, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out on the agenda and the addendum. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't have any speakers from the public on this item. So we've got a recommendation in front of us to grant planning permission. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Smith. Councillor Condacor has seconded that. Are there any speakers? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I've already made my declaration that I've been contacted by residents about this application, but I haven't indicated how I intend to vote. I'd also declare that I do reside on Wood Street, but it's a long street and I live on the other side of the road. Having judged this application, for me it's actually a very finely balanced application, and I've come to the view that it doesn't sit well with me, and I will therefore be voting against the officer recommendation. Firstly, the application, in my view, is not in keep with neighbouring properties on Wood Street. Indeed, I would make reference to the fact that several months ago, the planning department did refuse an application on a similar property on Wood Street. It was another side extension on the grounds that it wasn't in keep with the local area. Now, I completely respect that we have to judge applications on their own merits, and we can't consider the outcomes of previous applications, but I just wanted to make that point. There is a chronic problem with parking on the corner of Wood Street and Mill Terrace. Technically, the photo on there is Mill Terrace, not Wood Street, but anyway, I believe that Warwickshire County Council's Highways Department has failed in its statutory responsibilities to keep residents safe, in the same way that Highways failed to object to the planning application at the Bowling Green pub to turn it into a co-op. Quite frankly, I am shocked that Highways have decided not to object to this application. It's almost as if they've just nodded it through and not even looked at it. Indeed, the County Council's highways are actually having to put in double yellow lines there because of the chronic parking problems. Now, by taking away the garage, and it is actually a rather large garage, you can probably get about 2 cars in there. By demolishing that and replacing it with a side extension, you could basically put in an additional 2 cars on the corner of Wood Street and Mill Terrace. So whilst it's finely balanced, and I'm pretty sure I know which way the committee is going to go, on this specific one, I will be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Markham.
I'd just like really to agree with Kyle. I don't live far from here either, and the parking there is atrocious. There's a shop just, you can't see it, but just around the corner there's a shop. They're always parked there, and I think it will cause trouble if you have an extension and take that garage away.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Markham. Any other speakers? Councillor Hammersley.
Yes, I agree. Parking was never considered when these houses were built, but the way it is today, 1/2 cars per property, and we'll be taking away that that parking at the side and only increasing problems with neighbours saying you're parking in my space, etc., etc. So I will probably be voting against.
Can I just clarify? You say neighbours parking in their space. Are we talking on the public highway, or are we talking about?
Well, people assume it's their space outside their
Okay, but
property.
we can't. We have to be held to a slightly higher standard than that.
Yeah.
We have to assume the law.
Yes.
And the law states that really anyone can park on the public highway.
Yes, with the
So
relevant.
yes, I think we just need to clarify that for members.
Yes.
Councillor Brown.
Chair, thank you. This is, as Councillor Evans has mentioned, a finely balanced application. On the visual amenity, I would obviously it's a subjective matter, but I would take issue that the side extension as proposed is not disruptive to the visual impact of the property. The pitch of the extension roof is not the same pitch as the main roof. It can't be, otherwise it would interfere with the side window that's already built into the property. And I know this location well, and I would absolutely reinforce what's already been said about parking in this area. We already have problems with parking for Catherine Ward Hall, which is to the right of the picture. They're not actually shown. We have got a shop there, we've got double yellow lines there, and we're effectively removing parking provision by taking away the garage. So this is a very finely balanced application.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Any other speakers? Councillor Conticore.
Thank you, Chair. Many years ago, I lived in London in a street with similar parking problems, but there's actually no law to say there has to be a parking space provided in your street. If you arrived back very late, you had to park in the next street. And I cannot see how the lack of parking can be a reason to turn this down if there's parking further away. It's an inconvenience, and it's a thing of, you try and get back early enough to get a parking space. And I do see it great difficulty in having a reasonable excuse to turn this down, other than the fact you don't like the look of it. And I think considering where it is in the corner site, I can't see that this being one we could defend the refusal of. And as Councillor Wilson spoke on earlier applications, we can't spend large amounts of money turning down every single application we don't like when it's hard to have good reasons to refuse it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Conticore. Any further speakers, or can we go to the vote? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very difficult application, I accept. But yes, there is a current garage there, but we cannot mandate that someone uses that garage for car parking. People use garages for gyms, for workshops, studies, whatever. I don't know what this particular individual uses it for. He may or may not use it for his car. But we cannot condition that, and I'm not aware in 12 years almost sitting here on and off of any condition which we could possibly put to mandate that. God knows how many houses we've approved with garages, and if we could do that, that would solve a number of problems, but annoy equally just as many, if not more. There is no right to park on the street. There is at present no residence parking scheme there. That may be something which could be investigated in terms of if double yellows are put on there could be with the county a possible residence parking scheme, but that isn't a material consideration for this committee. So we also would be setting a precedent if we refuse to allow certain types of houses to have extensions just because they were built in the 50s/60s, if not slightly earlier. And people have an ambition that if they can't sell and trade up, that they might be able to expand and develop out, so long as it is within the confines of the law or any policies in place. So I know the area fairly well. I used to have family living around there. Used to go around there quite often. And yes, it is correct that it is a nightmare in terms of trying to park. but unless highways give me something to refuse it on, the inspector will laugh us out of the hearing and give us costs into the bargain. So, as much as I might agree that highways, sometimes it does feel like it is a desktop exercise, if that. I've sat here plenty of times and said that, but as much as I would wish it, I haven't got something from highways to back me up on that. And short of changing legislation compelling someone to use a garage, there's nothing else we can do. So I, again, have to begrudgingly vote for it.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, did you indicate you wish to speak?
I did, but I'll retract that because Councillor Wilson has very eloquently said exactly what I was going to say.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I don't see any other hands, so I will, in that case, move to the vote. So, sorry. Yes, sorry, please do, Darren.
Just to pick up on something that Councillor Wilson said, Chair, he's quite right, we can't make people use their garage. In fact, this applicant could remove that garage entirely without planning permission. Then if he was to apply, what would be the issue, essentially? The other fact, really, is that if this single-storey extension was ever so slightly narrower, it would be permitted development. You're allowed to do half the width of your existing house, again, at the side. This is slightly over half the width, that's why it needs permission. But if they were to rein that in slightly, they could build it without permission and remove that garage in any case. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, I think, really important clarification. So I will move to the vote now. So all those in favour of the proposal to recommend? Okay. All those against? And abstentions? Okay, so I make that 5-4, carried and 1 abstention. Okay, so that is granted. Okay, so we have no other further business tonight, so I'd just like to thank all members and members of the public who attended this evening's meeting. This meeting is now closed.